Hello, everybody. We're going to give everyone another couple of minutes before we get started. There's actually quite a number of BQH practitioners and people who are members of our forum who have joined today, and that's fun. But I'm imagining much of the information we are going to cover today is going to be kind of beginner oriented or people who are not in our community. But I am here to answer all kinds of questions. So first of all, in the chat, can everyone hear me okay? Can somebody in the chat tell me that all of my tech is working today? That would be fantastic. Fantastic. That is Dell. Fantastic. Gotcha. Sherry, thank you so much. Some wonderful, wonderful familiar names are here today and some brand new ones. And actually there's more people registered for this than I had imagined, but not all of them at all have shown up. We've got about half, I think maybe, of the people who registered who've shown up, and they just maybe powering up their computer, so I'm going to give them another minute or so. But let's start by mentioning, if you haven't been to a Zoom webinar in a while or never been to a Zoom webinar, at the bottom of your screen is a toolbar, and you will see a chat window. Many of you have found that already. And then there's also a Q&A box. Can you see that, the Q&A box? So you can go ahead and let me see, Q&A. Yes, you can go ahead. I can see that too. So you can go ahead if you would like and go ahead and put any question that you might have there, because frankly, I'm going to answer a couple of questions that came in from people who could not attend. And then I'm going to go through the questions, and I've got about an hour, maybe slightly longer, kind of depending on a couple of things that are happening around here in the house. And I'm just going to answer questions until there's no more questions. So feel free to go ahead and start putting questions in that Q&A box. All right. And yeah, we got a few more people who have shown up. All right. And Jeannie said she's just about completed the BQH course. Fantastic. Thank you so much, Jeannie. And there's Jenny Benson. Fantastic. I love seeing you, Jenny. And there's Dell. And man, I don't know why they have everyone's name in a dark blue against black. My eyes don't do that very well. So forgive me if I get your name wrong or miss you. Again, Katya and Nurit. I don't know if I'm saying that right. I'm double speaking. Oh, I know why I'm double speaking to you, Sherry, because you have two, you signed in two places. I happen to notice that. Maybe you signed in two windows or a phone and a screen, but I don't think anybody else has that problem. If that is a problem for everybody, for goodness sake, let me know. I've already had to reboot this machine twice because, technology and all that. Oh, fantastic. So we already have one question coming in. And yeah, all right. Sounds good here. Fantastic. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and start by saying that this video will be on demand. That means for people who have registered, and whether you're here or not, if you've registered, and you can continue to register if you have a friend who you think might benefit from some of the information we're going to go over today, registration and then on-demand video will be available. I think I'm going to make it available for a week. Kind of depends. I'm going to decide at the end. The temporary or proposed plan, I think, is to take some of what I say here, some of the questions that are coming up, and make maybe some video shorts or some content out of that. Okay, so that may be how that works. Obviously, I want to get a pulse on what you all are thinking out there. So I'm going to start with some some announcements, and I'm going to start also with, for those of you who are brand new to all of this, I'm going to start with a basic timeline of my involvement in all of this to give you a perspective of, my offerings and the people who support BQH and quantumhealers.com, which is the larger community of healers of all kinds. And I'm going to talk to you all a little bit about all of that very briefly, and then I'm going to get to your questions. So keep putting them up there. I'm actually also going to give a couple of polls today. And those polls are, there are similar questions, but one is designed for people who've already taken either the BQH class, the QHHT class, or some other sort of quantum healing program or approach class, if they've already done that. And then a similar question is for people who haven't done that at all, just have questions and they're just here asking questions. And I'll explain more when I get to releasing those two poll questions. So, but I really, really would appreciate if you all would take a moment. It's going to be a very short answer type of question. I think it might be a little bit fun anyway. It's going to be fun for me to read them. That's for sure. Read the answers to these questions. Okay. So I want to start by this whole idea of a Zoom webinar. I want to talk about the fact that I haven't done one. I'm pretty sure I haven't done a webinar since before COVID. So COVID was a big deal in my life. It was a big deal in a lot of people's lives. It was a big deal in the quantum healing community. It's one of the reasons you all even know about BQH, truly. I'll speak about that in a second, but for my own personal thing and evolution, my dad actually used to live here in my childhood home, and in March of 2020, I came to pick him up, and I took him home. I mean, he was nearly 90 years old, still living alone here at the house. I came almost every day. But I said, it's time. I'm getting you, and I'm keeping a closer eye on you, and you're going to come with me to the farm. And he didn't want to, but he did. And Daddy passed away this past September. My life was really focused on him these past 5 years. So that's one of the reasons I haven't done a webinar. And before, I had done webinars only for people who were in the community. And I decided to switch things up for a number of reasons. Okay. Again, calendar, we're doing the immersion class, and I see my beautiful friend and colleague, Christina Brady, here today. She's going to be here along with Donna McMurtry and Diana Adair in May, the very last day of May, actually, May 31st to June 4th and 5th. And the immersion class is for people who've already gone through the BQH class and want to come here to spend time with colleagues or practice. And that means you don't even have to have done one session and you can show up. That's fine. Or you might have done 60 sessions or 100 sessions and you want to show up and be around your people. Fantastic. It's a very small group. We have it in this home. It's very comfortable. We have fantastic food. We always have a great time. And again, there's already seats have already been taken for that. You can find out more information at the quantumhealers.com courses page. Okay. And once again, you need to have BQH already completed and under your belt before you can show up, which doesn't mean you can't start that like right now if you wanted to, because, you can get through that and still be here. Okay. So there's that. Monica says, I'm sorry to hear about you, Dad. Thank you, Monica. But you know what? It was perfect. He spent his days under my watchful, his final days under my watchful eye, and he died at home in his bed at peace with people around him who loved him. And it was everything. If I could have an ending like my daddy, please let it be that. I mean, he was walking up until the final days. He did have dementia, but he never had a moment of forgetting who I was or any of his loved ones. And it was my honor and pleasure to take care of him. Okay. Christina said she did the course in 2 to 3 weeks so she could get to immersion the first time. That's right. And she's been here in multiple immersions since then. because she lives close by and she gives us a hand, and it's been a lot of fun. And yeah, and it's a lot of fun for people to get their feet wet, so to speak. Okay. So again, immersion class is May 31st. That's a Sunday for a meet and greet. We have 4 full days of classes then, June 1st, 2nd, 3rd, and 4th, and then the 5th, which is a Friday. That's the fun social day. Some people stay for that. I love it when they do. Some people head on out because they can't stay away another day. But on that social day, we head out to the farm. And if the weather is cooperating, hopefully it will, we will spend the day outside on our acreage, which can be quite lovely, especially that time of year. If it's not, tornado season happening, and we've had that happen during BQH classes before. Wow, talk about energy. Okay. Right. Okay, one more thing too. We already have the next webinar tentatively. Well, it's already scheduled, but I didn't want to talk about it, but we already have the next one. It too is going to be open. I'm going to go ahead and tell you when it is, but I haven't marketed it yet. I haven't mentioned it in social media because I didn't want to confuse anybody. Okay, what that is February 26th, which is a Thursday, 5 p.m. And the topic of that webinar is going to be BQH and plant medicine. And I am going to bring Donna and Diana in for that one. And there's a reason why. And just briefly, so when BQH and plant medicine, what am I even talking about? Well, it is what you would think already, number one. You mean combine those two things? Yes, actually, yes. Because we are flexible and open here. But it's also this. It's also the larger subject of what we do is very much like plant medicine without that substance, okay? I don't think you're going to ever convince me to try plant medicine. I don't think I need it. As a matter of fact, I travel far enough without any of that, right? So I'm not tempted by that, but a lot of people benefit greatly. Donna and Diana have been working with people who've been doing that. And here's what they found. They found some people who are clinically trained to use plant medicine in like psychologist's office and things like that. They're not really equipped often to deal with the kinds of expanded experiences and other realities that show up for people who are, in that state, right? So BQH is perfect for that. And we're going to put these two things together in a course and begin to offer it. The pilot program is running this year, and then we're going to be offering it, and it's going to be called BQH Expansion. How cool is that? So we have BQH Immersion and BQH Expansion, and what's even going to come after that? I don't know. Probably something. So stay tuned there. All right. So I've already been talking for about 13 minutes, but I'm going to quick do a timeline. Okay. I'm going to timeline me and why and how I'm doing all of this. I'm going to do it really quickly. 2008, had a profound spiritual experience, took me straight to Dolores Cannon. That July, I was her demonstration subject, blew me away, changed my life. There's still stuff coming up from that. By December of that same year, so I started in July, but December of that same year, Dolores invited me to create a support forum for her. At the time, it was a Yahoo chat email list serving, and then we graduated to a bulletin board type service and a directory listing. I don't know, about 2011, I think, is when we really got going, and we jumped in all the way to 2012. All right. So Dolores then in 2014 started her level 3 practitioner program. I actually did that with her. I sat at the table with her. We talked a lot about it. It went through several iterations before we, created the program. And then I was the first one to go through the program, and Dolores granted me level 3 status. So don't talk about it all that much, but I do mention it. So I was the first level 3 QHHT practitioner, and that happened in 2014. Dolores died in October of 2014, kind of suddenly. And I was right there with the family and with the organization, completely willing to support them going forward so that Dolores's work would not be lost or forgotten. I did that for about a year. A number of months into this, I realized pretty quickly the relationship that very special one that I had with Dolores wasn't the same going forward, and they were making changes that I couldn't be a part of. Okay. And because of that, and because I became outspoken about some of this, not only was I excused from their community, it was even not very nice. It was not a nice year. 2015 was not nice. The end of 2015 was not nice. But every time I sat in meditation, I tried and I asked and I felt communication with Dolores. And it was, Dolores, I could just go do something else. Guys, I could just go do something else. And they insisted, no, 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 you keep doing what you're doing. What was I doing? I was supporting other practitioners and I had my own practice. So even though I basically was persona non grata over in that realm, I continued on for a while. And every time I sat with it, like, are you sure? Are you sure this makes any sense at all? And of course, then things happened, and I found myself watching what was going on and finding things starting to change in these big ways. There are a couple big ways. They started using the word intern. Dolores never used the word intern. They started saying, you have to do this many sessions without taking any money at all. Dolores never, in classes, people would say, when, Dolores, should I start charging for sessions? And Dolores, I can't be in charge of that. That's up to you. And you over here who has a hypnosis practice is going to make a very different decision than Candace over here who doesn't know what she's doing. She didn't really say that, but same sort of thing, right? She said, that's not up to me. Anyway, I watched more of these changes continue. I was still interested in the work. My guidance kept saying, keep doing the work. And then something happened where I saw somebody who had a really, really horrible physical condition say something on Facebook. She said, when I get out of the ICU, where she was only 30% heart function, I'm going to go have a QHHT session. This was about 2016, 17. And I knew she couldn't do that because she couldn't travel and there was no one in her city. And so I contacted her. I said, you want to try something? And we did something online, and that woman actually recovered and miraculous healing. And I was sold. So for about a year, without even talking to my colleagues, I did more online sessions to test it and practice it. Then I decided, you know what? We need a more flexible approach all the way around, especially since it's starting to be really locked down over in QHHT world. And so I released BQH. A lot of my colleagues said, that's great, Candace. I'm never going to do sessions online, but that's great. You go do you. I'm like, that's okay. I'm just following my guidance, right? And then 2020 happened. And suddenly a whole bunch of people who said, I'm never going to do that, suddenly signed up for BQH. And that was it, right? And that's kind of, that's the history of all of that. Okay. So I'm going to start by saying this, and I'm going to copy. Okay, I'm going to look at. Let's see. Christina says she learns something every time she assists. Yep, that's true. I'd be interested in your pilot program of plant medicine. Yes, well, we are. Chanel wrote that. You know, the pilot class is going to be held. It's not going to be opened up because they got to figure this stuff out, as you might imagine. But Donna and Diana are going to talk about it on the 26th. So make sure you sign up for that. Okay, let's see. I am going to, let me see if I can. Yes. So what I'm going to do right now quickly is I'm going to I'm going to put a link in the chat box. And I was asked and I was answering, and I want to answer a question for somebody who's not going to be here, and it's the one I kind of expected from this gathering, which is what's the difference between BQH and QHHT. I actually made a video, and frankly, I'm surprised that it was this long ago. That's a 5-year-old video I just put in the chat box. It's fairly short, maybe 10, 15 minutes, something like that. Nothing's changed in there, but I probably will redo and update that kind of a video, maybe with some new information. But nothing's changed from whatever it was, all of the things that I said in there, okay? So I never, as a matter of fact, I really never thought I would ever teach anything. And I saw how hard Dolores worked. And she, at times, it was hard for her. And she had all those books, and she had way more notoriety than me. Way more, right? And I wasn't interested in repeating that, but I was compelled. I was absolutely compelled because at her heart, Dolores was flexible. And I don't see that flexibility now. And many of the things that she suggested as guidelines are now hard and fast rules. That's another reason. And here's probably the biggest reason. A number of the hard and fast rules that currently are listed and followed by most QHHT practitioners, a great number of QHHT practitioners before and now bend or break those rules, and they just don't talk about it. That sat poorly with me. Who wants to be that person? Not me. Where's your integrity, right? So this BQH kind of became a permission slip. You want to mix modalities, you want to bring some Reiki or some sound healing or something into your sessions. BQH is what it is. And I did not take her script and just reword it and take her class and just massage it and make it. It's a completely different approach. And it also allows and it celebrates the practitioner having some intuition and not having it just be rote and systematic. Okay. So I think that's a pretty good length of time that I talked about all of that. And I'm going to get to your questions, and I'm just going to go in order. Okay. All right. So let's see. I'm going to make sure that I don't have anything going on in chat. Okay. So I'm going to go to questions. We don't have that many, kids. Think about really put as many questions as you can in there, okay? Because, yeah. All right. So the very first question I have is from Valerie. Hi, Valerie. Thank you so much. She says, I'm wondering how you safeguard a client when doing a deep hypnosis session remotely, considering QHHT versus, well, it's BQH. Yeah, she typed it a little wonky, but that's okay. Versus BQH, and concerned about support and safety of clients when they are alone physically. Not the first time you've been asked this, I am sure. And that is true. It is not the first time that I've been asked this. And you know what? I have to tell you, if you remember when I said just a few minutes ago, it may have stuck and it may not have. When I did that first session, I mean, it was so amazing, right? I mean, it was so amazing. I was ready to do it. This woman didn't have a chance. She had a terrible autoimmune condition and her organs were failing. She didn't have a chance to have QHHT session because at the time, in those years, I kind of knew where everyone was, right? I knew all of the people who really practiced QHHT because a great deal of people, even with BQH, and that's okay. Please hear me when I say this. It's okay to take the course and never practice. Great. It'll help your life. Promise. You don't have to be an active practitioner. But a whole lot of people take some of these courses, get themselves listed and think it's cool, but don't really, really take a lot of clients. That doesn't mean they can't have wonderful sessions in the small number that they might take. Not a problem. But for somebody who's facing a terminal illness, often they would prefer somebody with a little more experience with that. It does not mean that somebody with a lot of experience needs that at all. It does not mean that the more serious your problem is, the higher of a level that practitioner you need. It doesn't mean that at all, actually. Excuse me, my ginger. All right. I'm going to stick a peppermint in my mouth too, so hopefully I don't start coughing. All right. So I did sessions for about a year before really talking to anybody about it. Okay. Because I wanted to see what really is the issue here. Okay. Now, look, I was in many classes with Dolores, many, where people would say, hey, can we do sessions using Skype? Zoom wasn't a thing back then. Can we do Skype sessions? Dolores was like, no, 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 no. And she had her reasons. We, on our original support forum, because we used to be the official, but I call it the original support forum, we still have some videos of Dolores answering some questions. And one was on this. And she was adamant. Don't you do sessions online? I don't recommend it. I don't like it. And I guarantee you it was not easy for me to do my first one online. But I followed my intuition with that first person, right? And then I got really great feedback, changed her life. The feedback was so fantastic after this woman's session. She had 30% heart function. She'd been in the ICU multiple times before. She was a single mom, 3 kids. And after the session, she got better. And then she was running some blood tests with her doctor. As you do after, almost always when you're in the hospital, especially for something serious, you go back to your doctor and you get reevaluated, right? So she goes back to her doctor to get reevaluated. And the markers that proved her autoimmune condition were not even on the blood test. And the doctor's office said, I don't remember her name. I'm going to call her Mary. Mary, you have to come back and retake this blood test because something happened. I don't know how it happened, but something happened. They've mixed up the labs because your labs are perfect. She's like, I feel great. They're like, yeah, but you can't not have the markers for this autoimmune because it never changes. So they must have mixed up the labs. They made her go back. They made her give blood again. And you know what I'm going to say, right? The labs were still mixed up as far as the doctor goes. The doctor didn't want to talk about it anymore, but her life changed. And that doesn't happen with everybody all the time, as we know. But it was fantastic that was my first online session. Okay, so then I started doing online sessions for about a year. And at first, I made sure that somebody else was in the house, right? Or I asked about that, let's have a support person nearby or in the house or whatever. And then I got more and more relaxed about that. I no longer require that. If it happens, that's fine. Here's what I found out. Not only are they safe, they're safer. I'll tell you that in a second because I need to finish my thought about Dolores. People would raise their hands, say, can we do Skype sessions? Dolores would say no. And as much as I loved Dolores, she would repeat a lot. But I do that too. It's just the way the human brain works. Repeat certain stories or certain facts or certain details that make the most sense, that communicate the answer the best. So when people would ask Dolores, why not do sessions online? And she would tell a story. She would say, let me tell you about what happened this one time. And she would talk about this demonstration session that she was doing actually, and I believe it was in England. So she had headed overseas. She was in the UK. She was in England. And she was in a hotel. That's where all these classes were held. But the setup for this hotel was, it had and some hotels are like this, that it has like a central open part, right? So all of the rooms are around like this, and when you walk like this, you can look down to the lobby. It was that kind of a hotel. The one in the one in not in Fayetteville, in well, I'm going to forget now. Fayetteville was well, it doesn't matter. It was like that too, but where they put Dolores in that class, in this particular class that she referenced all the time, is in kind of an open air. So it was open, right? It wasn't in a ballroom. It didn't have closed doors. The floor didn't have people walking by, I don't think, but it was the one whole part of the room was open to the atrium. Can you kind of envision that? So it wasn't in a box, or it wasn't behind all sorts of walls. It was in an alcove or something like that, right? Where she had and was teaching this class. And so she gets this guy, I guess a great big burly guy, as the demonstration subject. And he comes down off the cloud and he starts screaming his head off. He's screaming. And frankly, I had forgotten. He was either being burned at the stake, or he was a woman who was being raped. It was one of the two. I know. I'm sorry. I can't remember which one it was. But he's screaming bloody murder. I think it might have been the burned at the stake one, but my memory kind of fails me on that detail. As you might imagine, big guy, big lungs, lots of volume. He disturbs the whole hotel. Police is called. All that stuff is happening. And Dolores was understandably mortified, right? Okay, I'm going to cough for a minute. I'm going to make myself mute. She was absolutely mortified. Now, what do you do? Well, anyone who's been through the training, no matter what approach it is, you learn that as the facilitator, you take charge. You then take charge of what's going on, right? You take charge of that person who's having this very big reaction. And there are many ways of doing that. And we go over that in the class, and all classes, most classes talk about that. Okay. I've never known the practitioner not bring such a situation under control. Not ever. Okay. About the only way that would really concern me is if the practitioner got up and left the room or whatever. And you're asking, well, how do you do that online or whatever? Well, you do it the same way. You do it the same way. You just begin to take charge of the session, right? Now, some people, some classically trained hypnotherapists might call that an ab reaction. Oh my gosh, look at all of these questions that are coming in. I better get going on answering this. I don't actually believe in ab reactions. Ab reactions is it's a label, and a lot of classical hypnotherapists is like, you don't want an ab reaction. I don't know. One person's ab reaction is a cathartic moment in a session for somebody else, and really it is a breakthrough. And we prepare clients like that. We don't talk about specifically, we don't go, hey, if you freak out. No, we don't do that, because that's kind of there's a way that can be considered suggesting it. But we do talk about what happens if the connection is lost. First of all, we go through a process of saying we are connected energetically even if the connection is lost. Guaranteed. Here are the steps. Here's what we do. We do a water ceremony. We talk to our guides. We talk about it all. And in the QHHT and most other traditions, including BQH, we say whatever comes up is what was supposed to come up. Your higher self's always in charge. Well, guess what? When the technology clicks off, the higher self is still in charge. If you believe it in one situation, you believe it across the board. The higher self doesn't go, I'm gonna be in charge of this, but only if the internet stays strong. No, it doesn't work like that. And so that whole year that I practiced, I don't even know. I probably should have written it down a little bit more. But let's just say, as I was going through all of this, I did have my moments of disconnection, and they all worked beautifully. And then I became curious about the moments of disconnection. And guess what? Every single time it was helpful. What? Yeah, it was helpful. How long have I been disconnected? As few as a few seconds to as long as about 30 minutes. I still haven't talked about specifically about that session. I actually sitting right here on this sofa when that happened. It was extraordinarily wonderful and powerful for the client. I've learned not to worry about it because my trust is in this approach completely. And quite frankly, if you are not at that level of trust, please don't do online sessions. You don't have to. There are people who are like, I'm not doing them. Now, during COVID, a whole lot of those people said, well, maybe I'll do that since I want to pay my bills. And now it's less of a deal than it ever was 5 years ago. I hope that answers your question. Oh, and I want to say this. They're safer. They're safer than in-person sessions. How can I say that? Here's how I can say that. There's always the advice to bring a driver, somebody who will drive you to a session, an in-person session, so that you will be driven back. Or you take a cab or an Uber, and the Uber will take you back, either to an airport or your home or whatever. Guess how many people do that? Not many. Doesn't matter if you suggest it. They show up in their car anyway. And you go through what you go through. I'm having an in-person session right here tomorrow, and I will go through with that person who's I don't know, 60, 70 miles away from here. I will do everything with her to make sure she's awake and present and grounded before leaving. It doesn't matter if you do that or not, because, and I'm not saying it happens with everybody, because it doesn't, but you will hear back from some, just some, but you will hear back from some saying, yeah, I thought I was awake completely, but I really don't remember driving all that way home. I think if you're at home on your sofa or in your bed, you're safer than getting behind the wheel of a car and not remembering. That's how I absolutely stand behind my safer comment. Not only that, we are north of 5,000, approaching not quite 10, but somewhere between 5 and 10,000 BQH students who've gone through this. So it's not just me who can say this now, right? All kinds of thousands of practitioners are doing this work across the world and come up with the same exact answer. Okay. Moving on to the next question. Thank you so much for all of them. Ooh, there's 20. I will keep going. Okay. People who cannot visualize, how can they get into a trance state and connect with their SC? Okay. I love this question, and I will answer it very, very simply. Blind people, blind from birth, can have a quantum healing session. How? They don't know what seeing is. I mean, obviously they have people try to explain that. Having another mint. You don't need to see. We sort of inadvertently use this word see because we use it kind of colloquially, right? What do you see? What do you notice? Another word could be, what are you imagining? What's coming to you? We receive information in a lot of different ways, not just seeing. But we tend to talk about seeing because we even say clairvoyant, right? Clairvoyant. Seeing past the norm, that's clairvoyant. But clairaudient is hearing. Clairsentient is knowing. And some people smell and taste or touch. Those senses happen as well. They're less common for information and journeying purposes, but they do happen. They do happen. It's just not necessary. It's a complete misunderstanding that a movie plays behind your eyelids doing this work. Can it? Yes. All you have to be able to do is access your imagination, which I maintain and have maintained for a long time, is the language of your higher self. That's all. You don't need to see anything. And there's a whole lot of people talking about aphantasia and all that. They can't imagine anything. And I even have a little self-test with that. I have aphantasia. I can't even do that. And I will usually use a red bird with this. I'm like, great. You see that, here's a cardinal. Here's a picture of a cardinal. Yeah. And I'll even show it to him. Here's a picture of a cardinal. Okay. Now, I'm going to ask you a question in a minute, and I want you to answer immediately, right? See this cardinal? I've just put a hat on him. What was the hat? I don't care if they have aphantasia or not. If they say top hat, that's the way this works. If they say ball cap, that's the way this works. Okay? But I didn't see it. You don't need to see it. You just need to open up and let the information come. Okay? I hope that is helpful. Okay, we have another question from Chanel. How to get over the hesitation that I won't be able to get people to drop into hypnosis. You stop using that word. Actually, completely new to this besides having my own session. The word is brought with all kinds of baggage. Can they access their imagination? That's all they need. Can you get them to tell a story? Can you get them to imagine the hat on the bird? What you need is the person to be interested in participating. You're just there. One of the best ways I like talking about what we do, actually, it's like your client is going to a movie theater. Even if they're blind, they can still hear. Okay, so don't catch me up on that. It's like they're going to a movie theater and you're holding a flashlight. It's like you are the doorman and you're like, okay, come this way, right? And you kind of get them comfortable in their chair and then you stand by them if they need it. But the thing that's happening for them, whether they see it, hear it, feel it, or know it, comes through them. And you're there to remember what they're interested in, what their issues are, to help them if they need guidance of some kind, or prepping, debriefing, and all of that. That's your job. Practitioners have been around for a long while. A lot of this pressure just goes away because you realize you can and you should be the best practitioner that you can be. Why not? But it doesn't matter how many sessions you have under your belt. What matters is how invested your client is to actually explore. And some people can do it better than others. And some people show up thinking you're going to do it for them. Even Dolores said this, and it stands true. She would say, 90% of what's going to happen today is up to you. I don't see that statement changing at all. It's up to the client. You do your best. They can't do it. Please don't take on that burden. Don't do it. I don't. Okay. All right. How do you get over it? You practice on other practitioners. You come to Immersion even. It's one of the reasons people show up. Okay. That one is answered. All right. Monica. Hi, Monica. What do I do when my client stays in the current lifetime? You let them stay there. You let them stay there. I'll tell you a story in a second. Oh, wow. You've got all kinds of, you put them all in a row. Okay. If something comes up, you explore it anyway, because you don't know if it's the current lifetime. Not really, not right away. My favorite session to reference about this was a woman who showed up who had stage 4 pancreatic cancer. Stage 4 pancreatic cancer. Hardly anyone has a good story once they have that diagnosis. Her niece made the appointment. She showed up. It's a long story, but here's how it ended up. She didn't believe in any of this, but she was willing to try. If you were somebody who didn't know about this work and didn't know the things that could happen, you know what you would have seen? You would have seen a woman sit down, close her eyes, and sort of remember 3 really nice days from her life. A birthday party, the birth of her son, maybe the wedding of her son. I think it was those 3. A few weeks later, I found out she went into remission. No higher self, no healing energy, nothing beyond remembering and just daydreaming on the sofa with me. So what changed? Well, I don't really know. She didn't come back. We hadn't talked about it. I don't have access to her higher self. I think she simply re-experienced the love of her life. I love being alive. And maybe the simple act of remembering of the gratitude of those scenes, and maybe that she decided to do anything at all for her own health, that momentum. There's a number of things. Or our session simply could have had her switch up something else somewhere else that had nothing to do with me or exactly what she saw. Don't know. All I know is, isn't it worth the try? Okay. Also, current lifetime. Here's a session I had with a kid. He was a 19-year-old kid. And when he came off the cloud, this was in QHHT days, from everything he was saying, he was himself, but he slipped into a parallel lifetime. Okay? He slipped into a parallel lifetime to view. This is why the interview is important. You pay attention to who the parents are and what the situations are. And at some point, I realized he's not in his current life. He's the same age, but it's a different trajectory. Also, a fantastic ending to that session with a caveat at the end because, and he had a medical issue as well that turned out so well, except for he didn't completely follow his higher self's advice, and some of that returned. It was very interesting. Too long of a story to talk about now. What if your client sees nothing? Again, they don't have to see anything. They just have to open up to an experience, and they have to access their imagination. There's many prompts that BQH class has, and there's many ways to overcome that. And one of the final ways that I say all the time to students is to tell their clients even is make it up. And people are like, I don't want to make it up. I want it to be valid. I want it to be real. But make it up is really kind of code for please invite your imagination in. Because some people are like, I can't have my imagination involved because this is too important to me. But if you don't bring your imagination in, you're not going to go anywhere. Okay? What I do if my client's subconscious says, no, I can't ask questions. Well, I've never had that happen. There may be some questions they're not allowed to ask. I have had that happen. I've seen that happen with Dolores too. And what you say, you don't give up right away. You actually go, why? Why can't I ask about that? And circle it for a while, try a few different ways, and then come back to the what questions can I ask? And at that point, I tend to think that there's conscious mind interference. The ego, the analyzer, the programming is playing games here. And sometimes that's easier to tell, and sometimes it's not so easy to tell. And that just comes with this territory. Okay? So you just keep trying. And, maybe they're not ready. They're not ready for this. Okay. What do I do if I have a return client? Do I use the same induction? Sure, why not? Why not? Ask them what they thought about it. Ask them what they liked and what they didn't like. And then adjust. All right, here we go. Wow, you guys are great. Now I've got lots and lots of questions here. So And we are 50 minutes in. Listen, remember, this is being, you can head back and re-listen to this for about a week. So if you've got to go, that's great. I was having my one horse's hooves trimmed this afternoon, but I had my husband on standby. I'm like, look, they've got a lot of questions. I might keep going. So I plan to keep going, especially if you guys can handle my little breaks of drinking and mints. Okay. Gotcha. Hi, Candace. Lovely to see you. Nice to see you. This is more of a practical question. For somebody who's been practicing for a while, what kind of client range, number of clients, do I typically see across a month or a year? I'm sure it fluctuates, but I thought I'd ask. Okay. Yes, of course it fluctuates. I have lots and lots of responsibilities, and I have a lot of goals. This is the year I really want to try to, if I don't get it there, I want to be close to publishing. I couldn't do any of that kind of stuff when Daddy was alive. And I don't just run my own practice. I run the larger community where we have hundreds of people with classes, events, and technical considerations and all of that stuff. And I live on a farm. And it's really, as much as my husband, my wonderful husband, puts up with me, the reason we live on a farm is squarely on my shoulders. I'm the one who's interested in all of the animals, all of the horses, and all of the farm things, and all that's on me as well. So if I only had my own practice, I would still have things to do. The community really, really takes a big chunk, and the classes and all that kind of stuff. Content creation so that we keep the lights on. I never do more than one client a day ever. And I rarely do two clients in a row unless they come together for a session, which I have a week from this weekend, actually. I have people who are flying in from Puerto Rico, 2 people. And I will do back-to-back sessions then. And, in the early days before Daddy and before we got deep into living on a farm kind of thing, I would head to Austin and I would do sessions every day for a week. And then for 3 weeks, I would do farm things and take care of things up here in Kansas. But I couldn't have sustained that. I couldn't have done it every day for 4 weeks. I couldn't have done that. So that's when I would do 5 or 6 sessions a week, every week. Now it's highly variable depending on everything that's going on. I don't feel the need to take every client who asks. Right now, because I'm kind of getting back into it, it's 2 to 3. The farm runs smoother when it's more like 2. And so there you have it. Every once in a while there's more, and every once in a while there is less. Okay, or there are less. Excuse me. Yeah. All right. Okay. Kind of depends on, what your responsibilities are. Do you have another job? All of those things, right? Okay. All right. So I have a hey, and I'm going to say hey to, I don't know, Lene. Don't know how you say that, but hi. Okay, answered that. How do you know when a client is in the correct trance step? That's another Chanel question. Chanel, you don't know, and you almost don't care. I mean, sure, you want the client and their clue. There's all kinds of clues. There's the REM, there's the eyes, there's the breathing. There's a lot of clues, but I will take you back to my pancreatic cancer lady. I don't know that she got deep at all. I don't know that she would have let herself, right? Stuff happens in the lighter trance states. Okay, and I will answer this actually because you know what? This might surprise you, but some people who go into that absolutely deep somnambulistic trance state where they truly don't remember hardly anything when you count them back up and out, a great number of them, I would even say the majority of them, they are so freaked out about that not remembering anything at all. A lot of them never listen to their recordings. And a lot of them sort of often leave kind of deer in the headlights. Also, I think it used to be that more people went into that state to be able to hear this information. And we were younger as humans back then. In the 1960s and 70s, how many people were talking about life on other planet or talking to archangels or whatever, right? I mean, we are just more used to this. We kind of take it for granted right now. It wasn't anything talked about in the 1960s, 70s when Dolores was doing that. Can't you see how people really did need to go really, really deep and disconnect from their conscious mind to be able to explore like that? So I think it's less important than ever. What's more important is that your client is open and willing to trust themselves. Okay. All right. How do you know when to transition into the healing portion? Do you ever start there? You don't. There's no one way to answer that question. Intuition is one. You'll feel the energy, number two. It'll be an appropriate sort of time, number three. You've already answered all the questions, number four. Sometimes you do start there. Absolutely. And you always take the situation that's in front of you. If you find somebody who's in front of you who really needs some healing from something and is a big lover of Jesus and the Christ consciousness, and they've experienced maybe this little scene and that little scene, and then you have them move on and suddenly Jesus shows up, well, there's your clue. Right? Right then and there. I wouldn't change scenes away from somebody that's described like that and take the healing somewhere else. Although it's possible you could do that. Look for the opportunities, right? There is no right one way. You must be flexible. All right. Okay. And here we go. Here's Jeannie. Hi, Jeannie. In your experience, what differentiates a transformational session from a typical session in terms of client outcomes? No, you never know. You can't know. You can't know. And some of my favorite stories, if you go back through some of my videos or you hear me chatter on or come to things like this, I will repeat myself and I will talk about, Christina knows this if she's still here. Some of my number one sessions to talk about are ones that seem like nothing happened. I mean, as in no words, no experience, no past life, no nothing. I have a number of them right in my own experience that are like that. And the one that I like to talk about the most is our dear friend and colleague, Barbara Becker. Barbara Becker years ago had a session, and I just love this so much because it's perfectly illustrating why it doesn't matter and why you can't know whether something profound and light shows happen and fireballs cross the room and lights flicker and things knock around and you yourself feel the energy. Sometimes that is it, but sometimes you'll get that, and depending on the advice given to the client, maybe little to anything will happen because it's all about shifting something, right? So Barbara Becker's story is that she has this woman who comes, she has a laundry list of things wrong. She tells Barbara almost all of them. She holds back one thing, probably due to embarrassment. And this thing that she did not tell Barbara about was that she had been incontinent for more than 10 years, right? So she is wearing some Depends or something like that. In-person session with Barbara. Barbara preps her. She's ready. She's there. She's going to do the session. Highly nervous client, but Barbara does what she can do. Client lays down. Barbara turns around to grab her notebook or whatever. Turns around. The client is grabbing her purse and coat, running out the door saying, "I'm sorry, Barbara. I just can't go through with it. And Barbara came back to tell us about this on the forum. Let me give a plug to our forum. Since 2008, there are all of these sessions you can learn from in our archives. Okay. So Barbara comes back to our forum shortly after that session, probably, and says, I'm here to tell you that sometimes people just aren't ready. And then she tells the story about this woman just running out. She's just not ready. You do the best you can do. Sometimes they're just not ready. But the story, like Paul Harvey, the rest of the story is this. The woman calls her, I don't know, a week, 2 weeks later, something like that. And she says, Barbara, guess what? I'm no longer incontinent. Barbara says, what? I mean, she either remembers or looking at the file. She said, you didn't tell me that. She says, I know I didn't tell you that. It's probably one of the reasons she ran out, right? Laying on her bed or her massage table or whatever it was. She said, I haven't been incontinent since. So what happened in the session? Nothing. They didn't get to the session. Love that. I love it so much because it means so much about switching up. It's the intention, right? And that is BQH. That's why that's why BQH is so different than really QHHT. There's an implied intention with QHHT, but we really talk about and focus on the intention with BQH. And so that is how and why a session can have nothing happen and still make a shift in your life. Okay, answered that one. Moving on. Okay, what are the signs that healing is actively happening? Is there anything to look for? No. There's nothing really to look for, although some people can feel it, meaning some practitioners can feel it. And it works like this. I mean, actually, just right here. Right here on this daybed that I'm sitting on, I had a client weekish ago, 10 days ago, and boom, the healing came in at some point. He didn't feel what I felt, which was the whole room felt like it was in a different dimension, right? The whole just was undeniable for me. Undeniable. He was like, yeah, maybe I felt a little warm there for a minute. He didn't feel it. It can also be the other way where the client feels it and you don't feel it. Okay. And there can also absolutely be neither of you feel it. And healing happens later at another time or another place. There's really no signs, although common signs anyway, because it's true, common signs. Vibration, which can be a lot like an OBE, waves going through. And if we have any time and I can manage the tech, I can show you a 6-minute video of a tandem session between me and Pamela Erlin you might enjoy. That was crazy. From the outside, I was the client. My friend Pamela Erlin was also the client. We together laid down while friends Donna and Diana, I had just met them. This was latter part of 2019. Dolores had subsequently told me that one of the reasons I had such a energetic upgrade like that, I'll tell you what happened here in a second, was preparation for 2020. And Pamela, my dear friend Pamela, although she didn't share it with her friends who were there at the time, we knew she was ill, but we didn't know how ill she was. She'd only been given a few more months to actually live. We both went through this session, and Pamela recovered. She's doing fine. She's married now. That was many years ago, right? Coming up on 7 years ago. She's doing very well, healthier than ever. And I was healthier than ever. And during that session, it looked like I'm having like an absolute attack of seizures. I mean, my body is going like this. It's a little crazy. And, but I made sure to tell the people who were in the room not to worry about me, because the energy that went through me was unlike anything I've ever felt before. anything I've felt since. And if I could put it in a bottle and have it again, I would, because it was fantastic. Okay. That was undeniable. And immediately, the effect was so immediate. And for me, it lasted about 6 weeks. And it lasted in this way. I felt invincible. I felt like I was 20 years old. I felt like I only did sleep 3 or 4 hours a night for many weeks. And then it finally tapered off and I came back to normal. Okay. So could be anything. And you don't need to look for anything. And it may show up later in an instant and it may not. Okay. Next question. Chanel, you are my question hero. What are the signs that healing is actively happening? Oh, same thing. Oh, I already did that. Done. Okay. Yeah, you just, yeah. Sometimes they're there, sometimes they're not. So you just don't worry about it too very much. You just keep going as if. Is there anyone that shouldn't receive a BQH session? Yeah. Yep. Schizophrenics, actively schizophrenic people. And that gets tricky. That gets tricky because ask me how I know. I've had at least 2 people come for a session who had schizophrenia but hid that fact from me. Many years now from both of them. One for sure knew what she was doing. She knew that I wouldn't have done a session for her, but she was a nurse and she knew how to hide it. And I will say this to you, though. Those 2 sessions I did, I would never do it again and never knowingly do. And then I've got a caveat about, or a PS about the schizophrenic thing. Both of those people, they were both women. They both benefited from the session, but I still will never do it again. It was highly uncomfortable, and I don't want to. I just don't want to. They're not in touch with enough reality that I live on a day-to-day basis where that's comfortable for me. And I'm not saying somebody else shouldn't do it. You want to do it? Fine. I'm not going to. I don't suggest you do. All of that being said, I had a woman who QHHT days again. She was like, no one will do a session for me. I'm like, why not? She said, I was committed to a mental institution. I received electric shock therapy because I was diagnosed schizophrenic. So no one will do a session for me. And I'm talking to this woman on the phone. And I'm like, why did you want a session? And are you on medication? She was like, no, I'm not on any medications. So there, okay. And she's absolutely lucid. Why do you want a session? She said, well, I had this thing happen to me, which has got my diagnosis. What was it? She had angelic visitation. Promptly told her doctor and her husband, and they committed. And she had electroshock therapy. And she was in an institution for a while, I think like a year or 2. All that had happened when she was talking to me, maybe 10 or even 15 years prior. And I'm like, and so I'm still talking to her because the whole thing is very interesting to me. And, you have to be careful who you tell things to, right? And I actually asked her, well, tell me about your life since the institutionalization and the electroshock. What's it been like? Do you have a stable marriage? Oh, yes, very stable marriage, loving husband, well-adjusted kids. Do you have a job? Yes, I'm a bookkeeper, and I've had that position all this time. I'm like, I'm no doctor. I'd say that louder. I'm no a doctor, and I have no business saying this, but I did to her on the phone. I'm like, you don't sound schizophrenic to me. I think it was a misdiagnosis, of course. Why did they call you schizophrenic? Because I had angels visit me in my bedroom. Well, then call me schizophrenic because I've had all kinds of crazy stuff happen, right? So a misnomer there. All right. Other than that, I wouldn't give a session to somebody that gave me bad vibes or they seemed off. I don't care what label you put on it. If I don't feel, yes, that's great. I talk to people. And also in my intake form, I'll even say if we start a session and I go, Hold on, Charlie. We're not doing a session. I mean, I reserve the right to just give you your money back and not, sorry about that. I fell on something in the barn. Anyway, not really fell. I lost my balance and I grabbed something I shouldn't have. Never do a session on anybody that gives you the willies. Dolores didn't. Just don't do it. Okay. Answer live. All right. Here is Lene. I wish I knew how to say that. All right. Before I answer your question, I'm going to look over here. Yes, she's here. Christina says healing can start before the session and continue days after. Yes. She's correct there. Trust the teams. Yep, it's true. Because if you do this work for any length of time, you know what you're going to get is, I get this a lot because my schedule is booked quite far ahead. And there are many times I have people show up online and I'll look at their stuff and they'll say, you know, all those things I wrote down. I'm like, yeah, she's like, I don't have any of that anymore. Now I'm here for a different reason. You do this work for any length of time, that you'll get that too, right? You'll get that too. Okay. Right. Lene. Tell me how you say your name. Over in chat. How do you say that? Lene. I don't want to say it wrong. Hey, Candace, I'm curious as to which other modalities you have tried in combination. Lean. Okay. Pretty lean. Have I tried in combination during a BQH session? Lots. Mostly very energetic, hands-on, Reiki, quantum touch, that kind of thing. Sound healing, for sure. That tends to be, you know, some people really, tuning forks. But anything that comes to you as an opportunity that you think you might like to ask, always clear it with your client too. You know, I'm getting guidance that maybe some of these beautiful chimes might work here. Or I have this gorgeous crystal next to me. My guides are suggesting you hold it right now. Anything like that, right? Let me tell you what that does. That very often, even voicing some of that to your client, think of what happens in their mind. They're like, wow, this is really kind of magical. Her guides are suggesting something. It can be really helpful to do that. And there may be some people who giggle and say, well, that really can't do anything. Okay. And would it hurt? I've been known to sing to a client. Because I don't have a very good singing voice. I really don't. Matter of fact, look at me. I'm very open like this. It took me a long time to have a good hypnosis voice. Did not come naturally at all. I had to practice a lot. There are people out there who are naturals at this. I was not one. Took me a long time. So I love you guys out there who have to practice a lot before you're a natural. It's okay. You just have to want to do this, right? Okay. Thanks. But people do all kinds of stuff. They have theta healing, EFT, tapping. I've never done the tapping, but all of that kind of stuff, you know? Okay. All right, here we go. Chanel, how do I protect my own energy during and after the session? It's in the BQH course. Built right in. It's built right in. Okay. There are some who would say if you feel like you need to protect your energy, something's wrong right there. I don't know. That's a theory. And if you forget or whatever, you modify it and you don't get to it, it's the intention. The intention. It's all step by step in your BQH notebook. Okay. Katya, I recently worked with a client who can drop into a deeply relaxed state easily, but the moment I begin asking questions, she comes fully back to consciousness. How would you work with clients who pop out of the hypnotic or deeply relaxed state as soon as interaction begins? If that ever happened to you, do you let them explore on their own? Sure, I let them explore on their own if that's what it is. That's the analyzer. That's conscious mind interference, and that's there's a lot of different ways to evaluate that. But I go back to the original thing I said earlier, which is if they're not ready, they're not ready. And 90% of it's up to them, right? You can't make these things happen. You can, I always think of it like you can come at it in a lot of different directions and try a lot of different things. So again, this is in our course materials. This is in, our archives are a wealth of information. You can read. And a lot of people email me questions, which is fine. But guess what? You only get one answer that way. If you join our support forum community and you put that question to the community, you can get lots of people's answers. You get a smorgasbord of different ways of looking at it, right? Okay. I don't work too hard in that situation because it's just not up to me, right? I gently redirect, and it's going to be the way it's going to be. Some people's, you can call it ego, you can call it left brain, you can call it conscious mind, you can call it programming. I like just to call it the analyzer. The thing that's sitting there analyzing everything and needing to be in control is the thing that's probably waking up to try to shut this process down. What you gonna do? A lot of practitioners have homework for clients. You come, you're like that. Okay, now come back and we'll try it again for half price after this happens or whatever. Maybe have them do some self things where they can talk and answer something. There's a lot of different kind of creative ways you can do that, but it's not up to you. Okay. All right, Chanel. Where are we? Oh my gosh, we have lots of questions. Okay. I'm a going. Yes, Christina says she's watched me get up and physically move the energy within her and her client. Yeah. And sometimes I don't, and sometimes I do. But what I will do is I will tell the client, especially if it's in person, I'll say, you might hear my voice. And I told it, the dude who was here last week, you might hear my voice come over here towards your feet, or you might, just so that they're not overly disturbed by trying to figure out what's going on if they hear your voice floating around the room. Okay. Also this, and I know this is in the class and everything, but if you feel like you need to use the restroom, you just do it. You should never feel like you're gripping and need to use the restroom. I mean, you as the practitioner, you just do it and figure out a way. All right. Done. Love to hear stories from BQH practitioners as to what it felt like in the beginning. Yeah. Ooh, speaking of, yeah. Well, yeah, that's great. Our forum has it. Our forum is for energy healing practitioners of all kinds. You don't have to have taken BQH or QHHT. We do ask that you're a service to others, practitioner of some kind. You learn Reiki? Good enough. Come on and join us. Okay. Yeah, a collection of those stories would be fantastic, wouldn't it? Okay. Are there verified stories of past lives being real, or are they more symbolic, or both? It's both. And Dolores used to research them to death until she could try to find them out. Are they real? And she was remarkably successful And then she realized she was just spending a whole lot of time. And for what? It didn't matter to anybody, really. She wasn't trying to prove this to anybody. So yes, it can be real. Yes, it can be metaphor. And does it matter if it helps you? I don't think so. What mistakes might I expect to make as a beginner? Well, talking too much, not letting them have some time. Some people are hurried along so much by their practitioner, they can't really settle in. You have to gently settle in or gently check in. Thinking that you need to fill the air with talking. A little of that comes from Dolores. She would say, you've got to keep them talking. I don't know. Sometimes that works. Sometimes all that does is keeping them from exploring. So gentle check in. Sometimes a little too much talking. The number one mistake, again, though, is thinking that you have anything to do with the overall outcome and session experience. You have some, absolutely, but not as much as most beginners think. Okay. How do spirit guides how do spirit guides or higher self communication during? How do they communicate? Well, the client hears them. I'm not sure I'm reading that question right. Communicate in a lot of different ways. Sometimes it is just visual. Sometimes it's very literal. And sometimes it's auditory. Okay. Could be anything. All kinds of anything. All right. Done. Okay. All right. Can we talk about energetic entity blockages? QHHT folks say they are non-existent. But I run into them organically in sessions all the time. This is Del. Yes, Del. One of the reasons I created BQH. Because there was very few things when I was when Dolores was alive and I was assisting her, there were very few guidelines or statement that she would make that I would be like, Dolores. And I would keep this to myself. Please know that. Never in a million billion years would I have cozied up to Dolores and tried to tell her how to do anything. Not my job. I was so blessed to have my relationship with her and help her the way I was. She had a plan. She had some stuff. If she asked me, I would tell her my thoughts, but I never butt in, ever. I was very careful about that. However, every single class, people would ask about this. Entity blockages or attachments or all of that. Every single class. And she would shut it down every time. Now, I know why. She actually rarely, if ever, only maybe 2 or 3 times, ever came across anything that even remotely seemed like that to her. She didn't want to give it any energy. She didn't want to talk about it. She didn't want to encourage a bunch of conversation because, yeah, you focus on it, you create it. Absolutely. That is valid. We all know how that works, right? Her forums, her approach, her thing. She addressed it 1 or 2 times. One time, it's still in our forum. She wrote this long thing, and she was like, I mean, it's in one book, and then one of her written books, and then she talks about running across an elemental energy or something like that. And she talks about that, and I haven't looked at that post in years now. But she says it happens so rarely, and we don't even need to talk about it. But what, of course, was happening, and practitioners are still learning this, is that some practitioners run across this from day one. Day one. Now, I talk about this in the class too. I talk about it in the forum all the time. Hey, ready for this? I never have. I was more like Dolores. It just doesn't show up in mine. Why? Well, my theory, and I have confirmation about this in several different ways, not in my contract. Not in my contract to deal with that kind of a thing. It's in many other people's contract to deal with exactly that kind of thing. So BQH allows that. I don't delve into it. Why? Well, I have no experience. I literally have, I keep my own notebook in front of me when I do sessions. And I can think of like maybe one time when I thought, geez, I'm going to have to go to my own step-by-step suggestion if I run across that sort of thing. I remember a session sort of feeling wonky for a while. But it didn't turn out that way. I've never once had to release any sort of entity or have a conversation with any sort of entity. Never. Now, I've had clients' fears take voice. My favorite story, Christina's going to be like, I've never seen this one before. But it's true. My favorite way to illustrate this was a woman who came to see me who said she had an entity lodged, an evil entity or negative entity, however she said it, lodged in her throat. And she needed help with that. My answer then is a lot like what it is now. Although if I have a client contact me saying something like that now, I pretty much refer them on because I'm not denying these existences. I'm just saying I've never had to deal with it. Some people deal with it occasionally or all the time. It's a better practitioner for you. Is somebody not me? Why not? I refer on a lot of people. Not all of them for that reason, for other reasons. And because I only take so many people. Okay, so I had this woman come to see me, and energetically, this session is really interesting because, she's all worried about her throat. And this was an in-person session many years ago, QHHT. I was in Texas, and in the little apartment where we were doing sessions, and it was summertime, and probably there was a thunderstorm rolling through, and it was crazy. So she's having this real dramatic scene, right? And right as it's all getting all dramatic, it's just like out of a movie. I'm telling you, I can't even watch movies anymore because this work is more dramatic than anything in a movie. And then, and things are getting really dicey in the session, and there's a lot of emotions, and it's right when the front is coming through and the sky, literally the skies are dark outside, and then lightning is going off and the trees are blowing like this. And we get through whatever scene it is. I asked to talk to the higher self, and she starts to answer the question, and she does this. She goes, so imagine, she's laying there like this. I was so shocked. I'd never seen anything like that. At the time, I'd been practicing for years, probably 4, maybe 5 years, very regularly. I'd never seen anything like that. I was literally sort of stunned. I was like, huh? What's happening here? I'd never had to deal with it. But what I had learned, and this is important, this is really important, that no matter what's happening right in front of you, you don't instantly possibly overreact. You don't always evaluate from, I'm like, well, what's happening here, right? And while she's literally going, I'm sorry to laugh, but it ends up funny, so it'll be okay. I'm literally thinking, what do I do? I'm not, and this was before BQH days, I'm not equipped. because Dolores never let us talk about this. What do you do? What would I do? What should I do? So what is happening here? So I'm having this moment of all that going through my head while she's doing this. And a little bit of time is passing, right? While I'm pondering what the heck I'm going to do. And so she's doing this. And then all of a sudden, I mean, imagine, she's on a bed. The bed's kind of high. I'm sitting in a chair right next to it. And all of a sudden she goes like this. She goes, and she looks at me. She kind of stops and she's like, she opened up one of her eyes and she looked at me and I'm looking at her. And that made it even more interesting. And I'm looking at her and she says this. She says, aren't you going to do something? Aren't you going to do something about that? Well, that's all it took in my head. My intuition just showed up, that little peek out of the eye, and suddenly she could talk. And I went, I don't think there's an entity in there. She goes, what's happening? I'm like, I think that's your fear. I think that's just it's your fear. It's all in your throat. I kid you not. You know what she did? She leaned up on her elbow like this and looked at me and she said, you think so? Yeah, I think so. Now, I don't have a counterpart to that, right? I don't have any other way than any of these have ever ended up for me. But imagine this. Imagine this. Imagine with this particular client, not everybody else out there that would want to convince me of the reality of all of that. I'm not touching that with a 10-foot pole, maybe. Happily, I haven't had to deal with that. I've been very honest about that. But with this particular client, imagine if I suddenly would have, while she's doing this, leapt into action and then maybe done something like, oh my goodness, evil entity, what's your name? And then she would have probably, not for sure, but probably would have jumped into that exchange, right? I am Voldemort or whatever, right? So I think if she would have had the same kind of session with somebody else, may have been a different outcome. Don't know. All I know, that's what Dell says. That's exactly what would have happened. That's what I think, but I can't say. And that was the biggest drama I ever had. Although I have to tell you, I've had some really interesting things happen, but they've all sort of, doors flying open and just all kinds of stuff happening. But I think, anyway, it's all worked out well on my end to handle it in that way. Okay. So Dell says, I'm at level 2 with over 100 clients completed. Well, good for you that you've taken so many clients. Good for you. Good for you. By the way, that whole level 2, level 3 thing, I will say this. We'd only just started this level 3 program, and I already saw the pitfalls of that because pretty darn quickly what happened was people started giving, it started being something like this. I'm looking for a level 3 practitioner because my problems are really that severe and I need some of the best ones out there. And that was bad feelings between a lot of practitioners. Plus, it gave a completely disingenuous, I think, understanding of how this works. Give me a brand new, excited, barely 5 sessions under their belt practitioner any day whose heart is so interested into it and whose energy is open and wanting to help versus some level 3 who's trying to make sure they get their allotted sessions in and maybe are tired or whatever, and whose tools are restricted. I know which one I would pick. I think the whole thing isn't exactly what Dolores herself had hoped for. Another reason I'm pleased to not be a part of that system anymore, and why BQH will never do that. Never provide levels. Okay. Katya again. Hi, Katya. In another recent session, I asked the client if I was speaking to the higher self, and she said yes. However, it felt like it may have been her conscious self responding, and I could have been wrong on this. Would appreciate any suggestion. Yeah. Okay. So here's kind of what I say to clients. Gosh, we've been in this an hour and a half. I may have to take a restroom break here in a minute, but I'm going to continue. I'm going to answer all the questions. If you're here, I'm going to answer questions. Okay. Okay. I am back. Okay. All right. So let's see. Somebody know what I was talking about? Yeah, Deb. La, 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 la. Oh, yes. Thank you. If it was her conscious self or not. Thank you. Yeah. Okay. So in Dolores's method, it worked like this. I'm talking to the client. I am reading the induction. The client goes into typically a past life. I'm talking to the past life persona. Then I say, thank you, past life persona. I ask to speak to the higher self. The higher self comes in. And then I always use the analogy of a light switch. And then like a light switch, it's supposed to be the higher self that comes in right away. And then that's the higher self. Does it work like that? Well, sometimes. Not. And it really, really depends. It just depends. And with my fellow who was here last week, he'd never done anything like this before. And I actually told him, I'm like, I'm going to ask to speak to your higher self at some point, or your angels or your guides or whatever, right? I said, but your higher self's typically how we frame that. I said, your job is to say yes, and then allow the higher self to use your voice. And that can be a nebulous thing. You can have the higher self immediately. It can go back and forth. I think there's a lot of back and forth going on. Not with every client. But I tell you what really brought it to my understanding because of this. Because some people came and they wanted cosmic information. And that cosmic information would come out. And then I would ask their personal questions, and then their higher self had nothing much to say. And then sometimes it was vice versa. People would come with very personal questions. Higher self had nothing to say. And then an offhanded cosmic question, and then there would be an answer. I think the ego, conscious mind, blends in when it feels a need that it needs, a reason to protect the client. And you don't always really know. And the client may not even really know. But I think that phrase is helpful. How, let the higher self use your voice. Otherwise, some people just lay there. And they expect to be taken over by some sort of being. And they may feel like they have to say something. And for a lot of people, and I'm like this myself, I'll start talking and I'm like, well, sure seems just like little old me and my conscious mind talking. But the more I trust what's coming out of my mouth, the more the higher self comes in. For me, it's quite gradual like that. I think it works that way for a lot of people. Okay. All right. We already said that one. We already did that one. Did that one. Already did that one. And I am to the last question. So maybe we're wrapping it up here. What is your view on astral projection? I experience frequent out-of-body experiences. Lucky you, Narit. And I'm writing a book about it. Fantastic. I received a message from Dolores Cannon once in a dream, and that's why I feel drawn to this modality. Dolores is very active in the dreamscape escape and in the astral world. I once had a OBE left my bedroom and I wandered out into my living room and Dolores was sitting there on the sofa. It was one of the best things ever. Yeah, it's just another form of expanded consciousness. Sure. We do a version of this in sessions. And good for you because, you know, for me in my life, it's been sometimes, it's like feast or famine with those. They show up a lot and then they go away. Good for you about the book. I wonder what your message from Dolores was. Dolores seems to me to be like humans, all humans teacher. She's so instantly accessible, her energy, I think. And I think she's still interested in what's going on the planet. Thank you so much. Okay, so let's see what Christina says. I find sometimes with someone new to this, and if they start struggling with the questions, I start using yes and no questions. Yes, closed questions, we call them. I'm not sure if Candace would agree to do this. So yeah, give them something easy. Don't start with the hard ones. Absolutely. It's true. Give them some reasons to say yes. And it can shift some things. Thank you. This individual is new. Yeah, we were sitting on the floor. Dolores tried to explain a very important theory to me. She was very determined. Ooh, I wonder what that was. That's fantastic. Well, here's something that I think I only ever really wrote in Facebook posts, and I need to revisit it a lot. But for a while, I started to have these dreams that I believe were astral projections within a dream, which is, of course, one of the things that can happen. And I started this whole series. It's called Dolores Cannon and the Round Hotel. And it feels like it's a series that's on pause. And I mean pause for a while. I haven't been back to that for a while, but I think some of Taking Care of Daddy was part of that. Definitely want to go back to this because it's truly like getting in the middle of a 20 episode series. And I'm like on episode 6 and it was just getting fantastic. And then they just quit for a while. So I'm really hoping we go back to that. But here's the interesting part of what was going on there. Dolores had me, it was in a classroom situation, and she had me come up and sit next to her and then invite somebody to come in to the room that I would give a session to. And that person was my maternal grandfather. A man who was killed in World War II when my mother was just 12. So, of course, I had no relationship with this man whatsoever. And I had just begun that process of within a dream, regressing my late grandfather to learn information about his life, our life, and important things we need to know going forward. Still very interested in finishing that little project. But as of right now, that's happening. Okay. We are done with questions. I'm going to release the polls, which I really need to do. Okay, I'm going to close out the questions and say we're done with that. And polls and quizzes. Okay, so please, there's 2 polls. One is practitioner poll, if you're a practitioner, and one is the non-practitioner poll, and they're similar. But I'm gonna launch the practitioner poll, and there it is. It's just one question, and don't think too hard. But I would love it practitioners among you would answer this question. And that is, short answer, the single most important thing I wish I would have known before ever beginning this practice of quantum healing is blank. And if you're a practitioner, answer this. And if you're not a practitioner, a similar question is going to come up, which is basically, yeah, what one thing do you think you really need to know or understand before you make that leap, right? So the questions are similar. They're just depending on whether or not you've taken the course, okay? Get QR code. What the heck does that matter? Get QR code. What does that matter? Oh, look at this. You can share this QR code in the meeting. Go to the Zoom meeting, select share, and then this browser. Well, I don't know about that. I don't quite know how that works. I don't know. Well, there's a number of you still here. So I'm going to I'm going to catch my breath here while you answer this question. I really would love it if you would answer this question. Be very, very helpful. So now it makes me think, well, what the single most important thing I wish I had known before I ever began practicing quantum healing is. So I have to take myself back to Dolores days, right? And the single most important thing I think I would have wanted to remember or to know is that Dolores Cannon was a storyteller, and not all of her sessions were lifted right out of a book the way but those are the only ones she talked about. It's understandable, right? The first full year that we assisted practitioners from 2008 into that next year was a variation of people asking, well, what are we doing wrong? Because not all of our clients are going into the somnambulistic state. And not all of our clients sound like the sessions are these stories lifted out of Dolores's book. Dolores didn't make that easy to discover, which was why it was very valuable for us to share those things with each other. Yeah, I can only see the practitioner. Yes, I know, because I can only do one at a time. So I'm going to allow some of you all to answer this. I've gotten 6 answers. I've gotten 6 answers, and I'm going to give it just about another minute or so. So I have no idea, right, how many of you here are practitioners and how many are not. So I couldn't think of any other way to really, because I think it makes a difference. I think you might think you want to know something before you start practicing, and then after you practice for a little while. So that was the big one for me, which I don't know if that's applicable anymore, right? Because Dolores would say, and you can still hear her say in videos out there, I take my clients to the somnambulistic state of trance. Well, she does, or she did sometimes, just like all of us do. It's not every time. It's not every client. And her definition of somnambulism was different than the clinical definition, which also made it confusing. There was a lot of confusing stuff, and it took a long time to kind of tease this out because she wasn't helpful. Bless her heart, she was not helpful. She didn't, and you know what? To her credit, you got to think about it this way with her thinking. By making such a sweeping generalization of, I take my clients to the somnambulistic state of trance. Well, then her clients would just naturally fall into that or strive for that or believe in that, she was doing a pre-hypnotic suggestion, right? I just don't play that way. I don't play that way. I like more information and I like real information. And when I was taken into My Past Life by Dolores Cannon, I sure wasn't in a somnambulistic state. I was not. Still highly valuable, amazing. And if you guys haven't seen the movie, there's a Dolores Cannon documentary. It's really about all of us. And it's about Dolores's work, but it follows a practitioner colleague named Coralie, who's French. The original movie is French, but it is dubbed in English. And I made a short video that introduces that, and you can find that on our Quantum Healers YouTube page. Okay. Okay. I'm going to give you just like one more minute, and then I'm going to put up the next poll. Christina likes the movie. Yeah, it was a pretty good movie. Here's what's fun about that movie. They let me talk about my experience with Dolores, and I thought they'd use maybe a minute or 2 minutes or something like that. And they actually, I think almost every bit of what I recorded for them, the filmmaker was put in the movie. Plus, there's excerpts from my session with Dolores. The filmmaker remastered the audio, which is so fantastic. So you can actually hear Dolores taking me through my life as a caveman. Okay, I'm going to go ahead. 7 of you answered, so I will take that. I'm going to close that poll, and I'm going to open up the other poll, and then I'm going to take my leave. Okay, where's the poll? There it is. Okay, practitioner poll. Yeah, I already did that one. Where's the other one? Polls, quizzes. Back. Okay. Practitioner poll launched. End poll. Okay. Here it is. Non-practitioner poll launch. Okay, here it is for those of you who are not practitioners. The single most important thing I want to know before quantum healing, either being a client or before practicing it, right? And it may have been a question you already asked. That's fine. I'm just trying to, since Daddy died last September, I'm hoping to re-energize my participation in all of this realm. There's a lot more people doing a lot more similar things. But, you know, I've been in a holding pattern for a while. I did, and when I say I, we, my wonderful husband, who genuinely and beautifully welcomed my father into our home. It changed our life. It upended our life for sure. My dad was a great guy, but it did. Our whole lives were affected by that. So we're just now kind of getting back to ourselves, right? And reclaiming that part. So I kind of felt like I was in stasis for a while. And while I did have help during the day, most days, like 9 to 5 kind of help, mostly. 9 to 3 for a long time, or even 10 to 3 for a while. Anyway, it doesn't matter. The night shift was mine. So, you know, for 5 years, more than 5 years, 5.5 years, a little more than 5.5 years. It's coming up on 6 years of at nighttime. I was my dad's caretaker, and I still had, you know, work and farm to do after that. Okay, so you non-practitioners, I've got fantastic. Two of you have answered this. I'll give you another little bit of time. I'll read the chat. I wonder if I still encounter what Dolores would describe souls who is here as volunteers. Absolutely. Very often, very common. Absolutely. Lots of volunteers still here. Christina says, when I was new, I searched the internet trying to find a place to listen to Candace's session with Dolores. I kept teasing I was going to release it, and I never did. And I think it might have been because of this movie. Because the audio is so much better now. I wouldn't have known how to fix the audio. It's on a cassette tape. I mentioned sharing it. Yeah. Uh, you know, I was right. I almost shared it a number of times and I just never did. And I still haven't shared the whole thing. And I'm not exactly sure why, quite frankly. My intuition, I get down to and I go, it's not time. I don't know why yet. If I knew, I actually really would say. I think I have, oh my gosh, this is almost 2 hours long. I thought an hour, hour and a half. I did not think we'd go 2 hours here, but we did. Oh, 4 of you have answered. Thank you so much. So I was excited. Part of it was in the movie, yeah. So while I'm waiting for this last poll, those of you who might be so generous as to respond. And heck, even if you already responded to the practitioner poll, what would you have wanted to know before having a session? Maybe that's applicable too. I'm happy to have you answer this poll if as a practitioner you also were a client first, or can think back to before taking a class. I'll mention this about my session with Dolores because that I think that's a great way to wrap up. So when I had my session with Dolores, the basic storyline was I was a caveman. And in my caveman life, I was kicked out of the caveman family group for two big reasons. The overarching reason that, got me kicked out completely was the fact that I had these new ideas about how to capture game and to feed ourselves. And I was like, why don't we try this or that or the other? I had these ideas about how to make life easier. But the caveman society worked on the caveman at the top who was just going to beat you up if you tried to do anything new or that he didn't think about or whatever. So that was my first biggest transgression. And my second transgression was, and I was a male, I was sort of tinged red, my fur, because it was very hairy. I was the wrong color. It was brownish red, reddish brown, something like that. But most of the cavemen were brown or black brown. And I was this little bit of a redhead, and I was already suspect. And then I started throwing out these non-falutin, highfalutin ideas, right? And so they kicked me out of the caveman group. And much like humans even today, one of the worst things that you can do is solitary, right? So I had no protection. I had no protection of the group. I had no family. I had no communication. I had no nothing. I found myself in a cave. I was very hungry. But every time I left the cave, I became vulnerable. And I was hungry, but I didn't want to go figure out how to feed myself because it was scary. But I had to, and I didn't have friends. And I finally am out there trying to find food. And I hear something and I'm thinking it might be a deer or something that I might be able to capture or to make my dinner. And tell Dolores I'm afraid of the big cats and becoming prey and all of that. And I hear something and it ends up being my former 5 answers. Thank you so much. My former caveman family forced me off a cliff ledge, and I fall to my death. And it's really interesting. Dolores asked me at the death scene, as I'm looking down at my body, she says, well, how do you feel about that? That they basically killed me. I mean, they didn't touch me. They just forced me off of a cliff and fell to my death. And I remember saying this, and I remember the laughter of the class that was watching. I was very present, right? The whole story was unfolding in front of me, but I knew darn well I was laying on a little rollaway bed, and Dolores Cannon was giving me a session. And I was looking down at the caveman body, and I said, well, somebody's going to eat tonight. And the whole class kind of laughed. But the thing about the session is a lot. First of all, everything that my higher self said has come true. My higher self wouldn't answer a couple of questions from Dolores. I have my suspicions why. I'm not really sure I can talk about that, but I think it may have to do with Dolores still, right? And a relationship and or something has to do with me and Dolores, my higher self. And think about it. I mean, what if my higher self would have said, sure, they're going to be working together for years. I mean, think how that would have played out in a classroom. It would have not played well. And it might have shut down any of that opportunity. And I had no reason and no desire to want to do that at the time anyway. I had no inkling of that at all. So I think that was some of it. I think there's some other things that were involved. But the one thing that's interesting, right, is that I was booted out of the group because I wanted to do new things. And that replayed itself right back there with QHHT. I was absolutely booted off the list in a very public way the latter part of 2015. And the whole time I'm going, am I really supposed to keep doing this? And my guides are like, yes, yes, you must. And of course, that's because from that perspective, I think they could see what was coming, right? Which was COVID in part, and the desire for practitioners to have more freedom and autonomy and flexibility. And that's why we are still here. All right. Okay, I'm going to just check your chats. I'm going to say we are done with the poll. Oh my gosh, use your imagination and go with it. I'm interested in taking the online class. I could not join in at the beginning. Did I talk about if one can start doing sessions with this course? Well, yeah, you have to go through the course first. I'm not sure I really understand that, Martina. I mean, could not. Do you talk about if one? Of course, just go to quantumhealers.com. You can enroll the second. Would love to have you. My friend did not think so due to comparing it to the QHHT courses. I'm so sorry, Martina. I don't understand your conversation. Your question. If you go through the course, you can start to do sessions. By the way, I guess I should pull this in. Again, I think I said this at the beginning. Yeah, I did. Dolores never called anyone an intern, and she never told anybody how many sessions to do before beginning to take a fee. No, we don't do anything like that either. Okay. All right. Yes, there'll be a recording. It'll be available for a week. It's through the registration feature of Zoom. Thank you so much. Thank you. I was wondering, it was wonderful and informative. Well, you're welcome. Thank you so much. And remember, we're going to be doing more of this, right? And the 26th is the next one. BQH and plant medicine. I love you too, Christina. Bye. I know you are a busy girl to have spent 2 hours here. Thank you so much. Okay, you are so welcome, Chanel. You're so welcome to everybody. And look for more of these, okay? Thank you. Thank you so much. And I am going to end I was trying to write my question in a nutshell. Okay, well, you know what, Martina? I'm seeing your question right now. So if you can ask your question a little more succinctly, even right now here at the end, I will answer it at the end. Okay? Hurry. Gotta go. Dell says, see you soon, Candace. Thank you, Dell. Thank you, Jeannie. Thank you so much. Yeah, I'm not. If I didn't read your question correctly, Martina, and you can always email me. I was just going to answer it the webinar, but I'm going to say either I answered it or I will answer it. Is the course for HQQT? Oh, I see. Oh, okay. BQH is what I teach. BQH, Beyond Quantum Healing. QHHT is quantum healing hypnosis technique. Yes, it is a very, very different. We provide a notebook. We provide lessons. I tell you that there's 9 different kinds of different kinds of sessions you will have. 9. And QHHT says, here's a past life. Go for it. Because that just wasn't enough information for me. And BQH is taught much, much differently. It's much more flexible. There's a lot more back and forth. And the course notebook is right there to sit in your lap while you're having a session, so that if you come to a place where you're stuck, you can actually flip through it and get suggestions, even with questions that you can ask. It is different. It's quite a bit different. Okay. Plus, we have 31 bonus webinars. Hardly anybody goes through them. There's so much available, and it's a lot less expensive than QHHT. You are so welcome, and you can start right away, says Chanel. Absolutely. Yeah. Yep. Go for it. And there's no time limit. You can take all the time you want. All right. I think we're done. Way past 2 hours. Gotta go, everyone. Bye. Thank you. Thank you. Love you all. Thank you. Bye. Come back for the next one.